Hi everybody, Kevin here for WranglerForum.com. Got a couple installs coming to you today in the form of front and rear differential covers, as well as a new front drive shaft. And these both come from Spicer, which is the driveline products division of Dana Incorporated. Now, if you know anything about Jeep's history, you know that Dana and Spicer have been supplying products to Jeeps for years and years. So I thought before I got into the exact reasons why we're installing these products, I'd give you guys a little bit of history about Dana Incorporated.
The best place to learn about the history of Dana is to visit their website at dana.com. They have over 100 years of history all laid out on a great timeline that you can view at your convenience. Now, because there's so much history, we're just going to focus on the two key individuals who in the early 1900s got the company headed down a path of success. Clarence Spicer started his company on April 1st, 1904, based on his patented invention of an encasing reversal joint in Plainfield, New Jersey. He had much success selling to local automotive industries at the time to include Buick Motor Company, Mack, and American Motors. In fact, due to his success, he changed the name of the company in 1909 to Spicer Manufacturing Company. In 1914, attorney Charles Dana purchased a controlling interest in Spicer Manufacturing, and he became president and treasurer in 1916. With an eye to the future, he went ahead and purchased many additional companies. One of them was Salisbury Axle, which later became the Spicer Axle division of Dana Incorporated. Charles would continue to lead the company for many decades, and in honor of his outstanding leadership, the company was renamed Dana Corporation in 1946. Today, the company continues to be an innovator and leader in the marketplace of drivetrain solutions. They also know that Jeepers like to go ahead and modify their vehicles, so they came out with a performance catalog for both the JK and the new JL Wrangler. Now, it doesn't just feature products like differential covers and drive shafts. It also has complete axle assemblies, ring and pinion gears, shocks, all kinds of stuff in here that you can go ahead and shop for to add to your Jeep vehicle.
And there you go, the history of Dana Incorporated. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So let me go ahead and get started on these installations. The first thing we're going to do is get the diff covers on. Now, I've already got the front one on, so I thought I'd give you guys a glimpse of how that installation went while I get busy working on the back one. Take a look.
One of the first things you'll need to do is go ahead and get the oil out. Now on the JK, we have this handy dandy drain plug already located on the differential, which makes getting the oil out a little easier. Then you'll need to go ahead and remove the front cover bolts. These are 13mm. Once you have all the bolts removed, you'll then be able to go ahead and pry the cover off. In order to go ahead and break the cover free, you'll need to go ahead and put some type of blade between the cover and the mounting surface of the differential and kind of cut away the RTV that's attaching the two. So once you've got that small section worked free, you can use a little tiny pry bar like a screwdriver that's very thin and pop the cover off, and the whole thing will come off, and you can set it aside.
And there you go, cover's off. And at this point you want to go ahead and inspect the gears, make sure there's no chipped teeth or anything like that. Look for any metal shavings in the bottom. And then we can go ahead and clean off the existing RTV on the housing, and then we'll be able to put our new seal on and put it all back together. At this point I've got the RTV off, I've cleaned the surface, just kind of giving another rub down here as well. Make sure there's no leftover stuff that could mess with the seal. And then the seal, go ahead and wipe that off too, make sure there's nothing on it that's going to cause a problem, hopefully. First time I've used one of these, not sure what to expect. Always have used RTV in the past. So, be a first time here, I guess. See if we're going to get that in here. Alright, that's good there. Apparently I picked the hardest bolt to reach as the first one. Always a joy. Right now I've got about a quart of oil into the differential. I'm going to let it sit overnight, make sure it doesn't leak out before we put any more in, and top it off. Spray everything off under here so it's nice and dry. Got a paper towel down so we can come in and check in the morning and see if this thing actually works. It'll be a good test for it. Certainly not as good a test as once it's spinning and moving under strain and heat and temperature, but at least it'll give us a good idea if it's going to hold overnight, if we've got everything adjusted right, and if so, then we'll top the rest of it off. So, we'll check back in the morning.
That is going to do it for the installation of the differential covers. Now again, these are nodular iron covers, which means they are made from a stronger material than stock covers, And because of that material, they are able to handle impacts better and absorb those impacts better for anything that you might run over on the trail like rocks or other obstacles. So that is a positive. And let's face it, differentials hang down low, so if something's going to come in contact with your Jeep, it could be near the differential. So it's always good to have that extra peace of mind. Next up, we're going to be installing the front drive shaft. Here is a comparison of the new drive shaft on the top and the stock one on the bottom. Immediately you'll notice that the new drive shaft has a smaller diameter. It's also going to be a lot stronger than the stock drive shaft. At the end, on the right-hand side, you're going to be using a CV-style joint, which is going to be stronger than the Rapisa-style joint. And on the front, you're going to have a similar type of mounting surface with a 1310U joint up there. So let me show you how all this goes together. Installing the new front drive shaft is pretty straightforward. Got a safety jack in here as we'll be working underneath the Jeep, and only had to raise it high enough just to get access to both the front and rear bolts. Up here in the front, you're going to go ahead and remove these 4 bolts, which attach to the flange. They're 15 millimeter. Also went ahead and used a pipe wrench to help secure the drive shaft from spinning. These bolts are in there pretty good, and you don't have a lot of room to get to them, so it can be a little bit difficult. In the back, we have 8 bolts, which connect to the transfer case flange, or at least what I'm calling it a flange. And you can get to most of these. You may have to turn the drive shaft a little bit, but these come out pretty easily, and they are an 8 millimeter. Works back here. Due to some of the limited space, ended up using a combination of ratchets as well as box wrenches to go ahead and get these bolts out. So just use whatever works best for you. Here's a visual of how close the exhaust is to the drive shaft. And you can imagine as the front axle drops, this can get even closer depending on what lift you have and how much flex. Due to there not being a ton of room back here, we're used a small ratchet to get these bolts out. Again, turning the drive shaft helps get to the other bolts with this. But just take your time. These aren't really in here that difficult or that tightly, as I said before. At this point, I've got all of the rear bolts undone, and we can go ahead and get ready to separate the flange apart. So I've removed all of the bolts and little brackets they fit into, and you'll notice there's a little tiny hole, and you can put a punch in here. There's 3 of these around it. You can kind of turn it, but in this case, only really needed 1, and as you push into that, it will separate the 2 pieces, and you can turn it if you need to. In my case, I went ahead and was going to go ahead and turn it, but as I went to turn it, the whole drive shaft just fell out of this back section. Next up, you're going to go ahead and remove the bolt that is inside the flange. And that takes a 1 1/4 socket. It's not on too tight, about 150 pounds of torque, so it comes off pretty easily once you get it aligned. And again, not a ton of room in here to work, but not too bad. So at this point, with the nut removed, you should be able to reach up and remove the flange from the shaft, and then get ready to put your new yoke on. So just going to put a little bit of RTV here on the nut so we can put it back on. You don't have to reuse the O-ring on the flange, apparently, with this yoke. Going to take the nut washer combination. We just put the RTV on and slide it onto the shaft and tighten it down to 150 foot-pounds. Of course, we've already got the new yoke on here as well, ready to accept the new drive shaft. At this point, I have the drive shaft in and just have to tighten down the front and rear bolts. The rear bolts here on the yoke go to 25 foot-pounds. It is a little bit tight in here to work with a torque wrench, so just do the best you can to snug them up and then recheck them in about 50 miles to make sure they're still good and tight. Then for the front, you're going to go ahead and snug these up. Just use the ratchet to get them down most of the way. And then you'll take a torque wrench, and per the directions, these are to be torqued to 120 foot-pounds. And once that's set, just go ahead and take it for a test drive. Make sure there's no funny vibrations. And here's a look at the completed drive for you from the rear. Working our way towards the front, you can see the additional space that's there for above the exhaust area. And then to the new front flange connection. Had a chance to get out and enjoy both of these modifications, both on the street and on the trail. And no problems or issues from either one. Went over some pretty big rocks on the trails. No problems with the diff cover. As far as the performance of the drive shaft, feels just like the stock ones in there. Wouldn't know any difference, no additional vibrations or anything along those lines. So if you are interested in either of these, be sure to go ahead and check out the Spicer Performance Catalog, which has these and a lot of other cool stuff in it.